we always feel uncomfortable and we all want to feel good. But we've got this mistaken idea that we can always feel good or that we can get rid of bad feelings when we feel them. Like that uncomfortable, and it can be anger, it can be sadness, it can be anything. And it's a physical sensation, that sensation that's stuck in your chest. And what I was given was a framework to go, if you feel that without restriction, without labeling, without judgment, just the raw, take it on, like let it pass through you. So it's the most courageous thing I feel like I've ever been taught to do.
Hurry up. Quicker. Come on. Bloody hell. You're late again. What is going on?
Do not even start with me.
Well, I have
Bloody
to.
COVID, there's things going on everywhere. Got staff working from home. I don't know what's going on. It's impossible to manage.
It sounds like it. Have you got anything to sort of make your life a bit easier?
Yeah, Post-it notes, diary, couple of pens.
Yeah. Nah, sounds great.
Yeah.
You know there's something out there that can fix all that?
What is it? Magic
Bit
wand?
of software. And it's actually our new podcast sponsor, SimPro. They offer a solution to save businesses just like yours. It's a simple platform. It allows tradies to take back control by managing and tracking inventory, resources and billing across all of their jobs in one single system. So if you're looking for a tool that can help you balance your business's costs, visit SimPro's website, www.simprogroup.com, and fix your shit up.
I will. I'll be getting onto them.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Trade Mutt's latest episode of the 120 Grit podcast, the podcast for the working class. We're fortunate enough to have another fantastic guest in here today. He's a yoga teacher, he's a physio by trade, and he's also a bloke with a newfound love of chicken falafel kebabs. His name is Oliver Crossley. Welcome.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Mate, we've been wanting to get you in here for a while, and as I said when you came in, I was a bit disappointed that you didn't walk into our office on your hands because, you know, we see a lot of that from you.
Yeah, don't mind a handstand. It's pretty.
I'll just put your
fun.
mic in a bit. There you go. Yeah,
there you go.
You're in there.
All right. Yeah, don't mind a handstand. It's good fun.
I don't know. I just have no idea. I'd love to be able to do it. I always ask myself anytime I try, but the beach is the place that I feel safe to try to do it because it's a pretty soft landing.
A lot of people feel that. I give me like 2 weeks and I can get anyone. I reckon free handstanding. It's the smallest amount of tips. It's yeah. I mean, it's a weird tangent, but in the yoga world, like we're not the best at it. Like because the circus hand balances, it's a trade, and it comes from Ukraine. And all these circus hand balances will come out, and they've been like doing workshops in all the yoga world. And now that yoga's so big, everyone's like, well, I want to get the perfect handstand. And these people, like, you know, Cirque du Soleil was in Brisbane recently, dudes on like 20 meter high stacked chairs on one arm, and you're like, yeah, they know their stuff. But yeah, and so we're learning all these tricks, and that's and you progress really quickly. I couldn't hold one like 2 years ago.
Really?
Can nearly do a one arm handstand.
Wow.
Jeez.
My God. Well, we should probably give a backstory
Yeah, I was
to how
just about to say, this has come through a Trade Mutt customer who had a family connection with me and where I'm from, and we've been able to meet you through it. So Charlie Crossley's your old boy, and
Shout
I'm
out.
sure he'd be listening. Proud as fucking punch. Driving out to put out some green
with
caps
a big
somewhere
stupid grin on his face.
between Townsville and Julia Creek. Yeah, but Charlie bought one of our shirts in the original pre-sale when we first launched. He loves
in the Trade Mutt internet scam.
Yeah, the online fraud. And yeah, we ran into him at it was our first guest speaker event at Tennant Creek, of fucking all places.
Barclay beef dinner.
And we walked in there about, I don't know, 20 minutes early because we were as fucking green as anything and really, really worried about fucking...
We were nervous.
We were very fucking nervous. And yeah, just making sure we're there on time. And we walk in and this bloke's there drinking a fucking stubby of Great Northern, goes, I own one of those shirts. I said, fucking do you? And it was it. Well, mates
ever
instantaneously.
since.
Yeah.
He is your biggest fan, I swear.
Mate, we're his biggest fan. He's unreal.
Yeah, some awesome stories. Like, a really, really touching story from your old boy early on in the piece about the impact that a Trade Mutt shirt had in the conversations he had at Richmond Field Day.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And yeah,
Richmond
it was at that point having a conversation with a bloke like your old man that we thought, holy shit, these things are doing, you know, what they're intended to do. And yeah, we were just chuffed. So yeah, huge supporter.
Yeah, he's a fucking legend. So it's great to have you in finally.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Well, to give a bit of a background, so you're originally from Darwin? You're up in Darwin for most of it?
Yeah, it's a bit weird. Well, thanks to the man himself, we've travelled a bit of the country. So it was like, Darwin was high school. And I feel like that's home, mainly because sorry, Townsville, not the biggest fan. Although I spent most of my life in Townsville. My girlfriend will be angry at me for saying this. But no, I was born in Sydney. We went all over the place, but mainly North Queensland and Darwin.
Yeah, cool.
Darwin's a good spot.
Yeah.
So you are a New South Welshman.
Yeah, I'm a Blues supporter.
Yeah, good. Same team, bro.
Yes.
Fuckwits.
Oh, God.
So I suppose we want to sort of get to the journey of how you sort of became a physio and a yoga teacher, you know? Like a bloke from Darwin, I don't know how many blokes from Darwin become yoga teachers, you know what I mean?
It's not common. I certainly didn't see this. I thought I was gonna be a hotshot banking dude, and
Was that the dream? Was it?
I don't know. I had this weird like capitalist virus in my head where I was like, I'm gonna be this big suit dude, and Dad was pretty keen. He helped me with everything. He's such a supportive dude. But and then I was going to go to Melbourne Uni and do economics, and I did it for a bit. But when I was in high school, I was at this really cool high school. It doesn't exist anymore in Darwin. It's called Cormilda, and it had 30% like Indigenous boarders from all over the territory.
Yeah,
and because of that, they had this program called the GAP program, or Latitude it was called. And they do gap year stuff, and all these people from across the world would come and be like boarding parents with these Indigenous kids, because it was like, that's pretty cool if you're like you just finished high school in Canada and you're going to live in this high school in Darwin and do all these fun trips to these Indigenous kids. And they were so awesome, except when you play AFL, because I'm terrible and they're amazing. But and so anyway, so they advertised this program, and they're like, after school you can do all this stuff. Like there's these gap year things, and everyone wanted to do a gap year. Some of us, I don't know, instead of going straight into uni. And there's this book, and they handed it to you, and you can go to England. Like every Aussie kid wants to go to an English boarding school and be a parent or whatever. Anyway, I scrolled through. There was Vanuatu. You could live on the beach. And then there was an India one, and there was this picture of this girl, Australian girl in a jumper, standing on top of a cement building with a bunch of little, I think they were nuns in there, and probably about 9 to 15 years old. And in the background is this mountain. And I was like, that looks uncomfortable, but I want to do it. And I still don't know why. Like I've said to my parents, said to everyone, I'm like, I never really understood why. But then I was like, I'm going to do that. So I went to India.
What were your mates thinking?
I don't know. They were just like, oh, I was always probably a bit different. But they were like, yeah, he's just going to do this thing. But I had to get the money for it. So like Mum worked, we were in Darwin, and like Pass Bailey Pearls are there. Some people have probably heard of them.
Yeah.
So to get the money for it, that was pretty cool. It was a good year, 2011. I got a job with one of my best mates, Jordan Conrad. We went on the Pass Bailey pearling boats as pearl chippers or shell chippers. It's the roughest job nearly on earth. You go out for 2 weeks, you work 12-hour days straight, 14 days straight, and you come back for a week, and then you go out again.
Did you pocket any pearls?
No, the feds would be after me. Wink,
not
wink.
officially.
Nah.
We'll talk after the show.
Yeah. No, it was all above board. I didn't do anything. No, but I got a shell. They let you take a shell home, a mother of pearl shell. So I've still got that at home. It's pretty cool because they sell like every part of the shell. They would sell off to different button industries died a bit now with plastic, but they used to sell the shell bit off to Europe. They'd sell the pearl. They sell the meat. The meat is really good. Tastes like a little chicken nugget.
Really?
Bloody expensive, but it's good. It's like, yeah.
Jeez, I didn't know that.
No?
Well, I didn't know there was meat in pearls.
Yeah.
Is that ridiculous?
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got me. Yeah.
So
I didn't know.
So you were shelling pearls.
Shell, yeah. So you pull out the shell, and because it's warm water, it grows all this crap on it. And, and they have to. So you get a chisel. 3 blokes on a barge. There's all these barges, and you live on this big ship, and you go out in these barges, pull up these panels, and they've got either 6 or 8 shells in them. They're heavy, like 10 to 20 kilo panels, and you pull them on, put them onto a deck, and then you all chip them like with a chisel, whacking off whatever gross
all
stuff.
the dags, the dingleberries.
Yeah. And then, oh man, and there's one dingleberry called fireweed, and I think I still have scars on my arm from it. It bloody stings.
Really?
Yeah, I'm sure someone out there knows what fireweed.
So you earned your money to get to India then?
Yeah, I did. Anyway, so I got that, and then it was really cool. And then just went to India on the night of my 18th birthday.
Really?
Much to my poor mum's sadness. She was a very upset lady that night, leaving in Sydney Airport. But she was, I mean, like any parent, she's like,
is he ever going to come back?
Yeah, why are you leaving?
He's going to marry an Indian girl and stay there.
That's what they all think.
Oh, man, could you imagine?
Yeah, because they're just thinking about the grandkids at that stage.
Probably, yeah.
So how long were you in India for?
It was like July, August. It was 4.5 months. So I came back 23rd of December, went on the 1st of August. Anyway, so what that gig was from that brochure back in Darwin at high school was a monastery, a Tibetan monastery. And I had no idea about Tibet. I had no idea about monks, Buddhism, anything. Like, my dad's was a stock and station agent. Both mum and dad came from rural farming families in Western New South Wales and Queensland, and so I was like, okay, I better read up on this. And Dad's got a cousin, I practically call her my auntie, and I was like, she's into Tibetan Buddhism, and she's this lady who lives in Sydney, and Anna's lovely. I'm very grateful to her because this ended up shifting where my life went. And she told me to read this book, so I was on the Pearl Farms, read this book called The Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. It's a bit weird now that I look back on it because it had a lot of stuff in it. But anyway, and they talked about all this Buddhist stuff and like all these ideas and theories and why you practice meditation. And it just, when you read something and you go, geez, why wasn't I told this 10 years earlier?
Fuck, we've been saying that for 2 years.
I should have known this.
We've been saying that. Yeah, but yes, totally fucking understand.
Yeah, and like it was just practical stuff because we all know, like we all know our own habits, or we hopefully do over time. Pay attention to yourself and know how you work. And I was just frustrated with myself and how I did certain things and how I was just a bit grumpy. I mean, probably didn't come across like that, but we've all got like our own emotional tics, and you just go far out. Like I wish at primary school it was like, right, 5 + 5 = 10, and if you do this stuff with your thinking, you're going to get sad. And if you do this stuff instead, you'll tend to be a little bit more adaptable and kind of steady and happy. And so I read that book and was like, wow, keen. All right, let's get on this plane. And flew into India. Delhi was full on, like nightmare. I love the city though. It's really good fun. Recommend it to anyone who wants to travel. But
it looks full on.
It's so much fun.
Is that the thing where you like cross the road and you can't stop? Like you can cross the road when they're all traveling, but don't fucking stop or move. Like you just got to keep walking and they'll miss you. But is that it?
Yeah, that's it. I reckon it's pretty bad.
That's like crazy, right?
I've heard that's like really bad in Vietnam, but yeah, India's like that too. There's this big, in the middle of New Delhi, there's a roundabout and it's 9 lanes. And like walking across that at 18, when you haven't really been in a city bigger than Sydney, it's pretty daunting.
Most people struggle with the 2-lane roundabout. And in Vietnam, all you have to worry about, the rule is just worry about what's in front of you, and every single person behind you is just looking at what's in front, and then it's like a perfect storm.
Yeah. Oh man, full on. But yeah, so that was good. And then like there was a bunch of us, so we all like, because there's a bunch of other volunteers through this agency from across Australia, and I had this Canadian bloke, Dan, that was getting put into this monastery with me, and there was a bunch of other of us, and we all hung out for a week in Delhi, and then we went off to this monastery. So I got sent up to this state that's in the northwest of India, just at the bottom of the Himalayas, and it's called Himachal Pradesh, which just means state of big hills, like Himachal.
Is it fucking gorgeous?
Yeah, it's stunning, mate. Like, I got a good story about like Aussies in Himachal Pradesh, because there's probably the prettiest cricket stadium I've ever seen in my life in a place called Dharamsala, and this is where the Dalai Lama lives. And this cricket field and like stadium, because the Indians love it, right? It's and all like Gilchrist and that go over there to get a bit of coin back in the day, and like them still do it now when the virus stuff comes down. And you look up from behind this cricket stadium and there's like snow-capped Himalayas.
Wow.
Yeah. Like, and these are like, for an Aussie, you kind of go, oh yeah, hills with snow. But like big, like I remember looking and just going, it doesn't stop. Like, it just keeps going up. And we've already come up like 2 Ks.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, and anyway, so I remember we stopped in, jumped off the bus, look out, and we go into this cafe with this lady who's going to be our local helper, this like nervous Tibetan lady, and she was like, like telling me like always, she was like my mum, like, doing all this extra stuff for us. Oh, here, you're going to have these clothes and these socks, it's going to be cold. And then you get in this taxi and he can't speak English, but you're going to sit in this taxi for like 2 hours. You're going to drive out and then you'll be at the monastery. And I'm like, okay. And I tell you what, this is pretty fun, like that feeling of adventure.
Yeah.
You go in, arrived at this monastery and they didn't expect us. They didn't think we were there yet. And most of them can't speak English. So it was a beautiful monastery, but it took them like a week to figure out what to do with it. So we meant to teach English.
Fuck that.
Just got lumped with you. Like, didn't know you were coming.
They're like, oh, okay, well, we didn't really expect you here on a Friday. Thought it was going to be
It's
a
easy.
Tuesday.
Just send them off for meditation. Off you go.
Oh, mate, yeah. Oh, I got a funny story about it. It took... You'd be surprised living in a monastery that it's so hard to learn how to meditate. It took until the last day. I don't know why, whether it's like a karma thing, but there was like the monastery was split in two. So there was like an academic, because the Tibetans, like this is a long tradition. Like they've had this for like over 1,000 years. So it's really part of their culture. It's like Catholicism and like, you know, how the first son becomes a priest, and similar thing with Tibetans. And there's a split in the monastery where half of it's like dense, it's uni, you go in there, meditating practice. I never saw them, and they were the ones I wanted to chat with. And then the other half were the kids from like, it was like primary school, middle school, high school, and they were there because there was an education where in these rural villages and communities, they couldn't get it anywhere else. So if you go and be a monk until you're 18, you'll learn Tibetan, you'll learn a bit of logic and maybe arithmetic. And
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, and so most of them didn't really, like they thought Buddha was a god, and Buddhism's not really theistic, like it doesn't think that there's a dude in the sky.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I found that interesting. But so yeah, it was only until the last day we were there, second last day we were there, that I went up to the abbot of the monastery and was like, I've been wanting to learn meditation. Like, can you teach Dan and I? And he took us up into his room and was like, okay, we'll sit down. Here's a cushion. Here's how you do it. And you follow your breath and you count to 7 and that's it. And if you get distracted, keep counting. If you get to 7, go to 14. If you get to 14, go to 24. And if you get distracted, go back to 1. And I was like, oh, that's a bit stupid. That's too simple. I'm not going to do that. And then, long story short, now, nearly 8 years later, I'm still doing that.
Yeah, right.
Just counting the breath.
Yeah, wow.
That's all you need to do.
That's it.
That's it. Yeah, people think meditation, it's such a big field. Like we could chat here for 3 hours about it.
Yeah,
Like meditation could be it's a complicated tool or a method. And luckily with like mindfulness, I mean, you guys spoke about it on the podcast before. It's become a bit more simplified. But a lot of, especially coming out of India, people go, meditation has to be complex. So, you have to visualize your chakras, the lining and all this weird visualization stuff. But I and most people tend to gel with the simplest and often hardest method, which is just some kind of basic tool to anchor you into the moment.
Yeah, right.
What's happening now. And that's, your breath. Like everyone's got a nose. Not everyone wants to believe in Ganesh or whoever, and so everyone's got a nose, everyone's breathing, so may as well pay attention to that.
Yeah, right. So how long were you there for over in India?
It was there for 4.5 months. So we were teaching English in this monastery for four months, and like 3 hours a day. Little kids, didn't teach them much. Luckily, my auntie from Terrigal, shout out Penny Rains, thank you, sent over colouring books. That helped. And then I had like middle school age and adults. And then after that, we went on a bit of a journey around India. But luckily, in between, they do these random things where they go, oh, guys, we're doing this puja for 2 weeks. You're not going to teach. I'm like, what's a puja? And I was like, it's this religious thing. It's like worship. Some of us have been to Bali or stuff, like these big religious holidays, kind of like Tibetan Easter or something. And then we were just like, okay, what do we do? Can we go and travel off to these other towns around the place? And I'm like, yeah, it's fine. So one of the coolest trips we did was up over, you were talking about the Fink race before we started recording.
Yeah.
Best motorbike trip I reckon that I'll ever hope to do in my life is this road, and it's from Manali, which is this town or city at the top of Himachal Pradesh, the state, over the Himalayas, over the Tibetan plateau, into where the Silk Road was, the old Silk Road.
Wow.
And it's this old Buddhist city called Leh, and it's like 3.8 kilometers above sea level. Anyway, this road is the highest road on earth. Like,
fuck, you could punt a footy a fair way up there. But
mate, yeah, seriously. You kick it off the top. This is where it starts. You go up and you like, instead of going like up around a mountain, you just do this zigzag up this hill, and it was like mud. And I found out halfway up this muddy hill, zigzagging, and like so much so that when you look down, you just couldn't see the town anymore.
Yeah, wow.
This bus trip took 24 hours, and they were like, "Oh yeah, so this first mountain is called Rotang La," and I was like, "Okay, well, what does that mean?" And they were like, "Oh, piles of dead bodies."
Sweet.
Look out!
Where else are we going?
Oh man, I was like, okay. And then like these Israeli girls in the back of the bus just got pretty nervous, and you look out and there's these trucks just tipped over that couldn't quite drive properly on the dirt tracks.
God. So it's fair to say it was a reasonably, impactful sort of a trip for you?
Eye-opening.
Eye-opening? Yeah.
No, it's super fun. Like, recommend it. Mainly just because it was so different. And I feel like for anyone, I mean, whatever culture you're from, whatever place, like Longreach, we hold that town near and dear. Lived there for a bit as a kid. I know Eddie's from there, but it's bloody flat and open.
Yeah.
So like mountains are pretty different. Whereas if you're from the mountains, and maybe Longreach is pretty cool.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, just perspectives.
Bit of water skiing on the Thompson.
That's right. Yeah.
That is the best river ever.
It's a cracker.
Yeah, I've had a fair bit of it up my nose. Don't worry.
That brown water.
Cannot single ski. So anyway,
That's tough.
We'll get it next time.
Just kneeboard.
So 4.5 months over after school as a fresh 18-year-old, but you've come back, but with much direction. Like, where did you sort of want to go after that?
So I still stuck with the weird, this sort of capitalist bent. I was like going to become some corporate high achieving whatever. I look back and I'm like, I was pretty naive. So I was going to Melbourne Uni to do economics because I still really like politics and economics and stuff. I still find it fascinating.
Fucking same. I love it.
Yeah, it's just like, it's always captivating.
Yeah.
We were just talking about Mr. Trump before.
Yeah, we were. yeah, of course.
But so I did a semester at Melbourne Uni. Most of my mates from Darwin, we all went to Melbourne Uni. Awesome spot. Wish I could have stayed there. But then at the end of the first semester, for a bunch of reasons, like bit of financial, I was out in like West Footscray in this like share house with a couple of guys, and it was like too far from uni, and anyway, it was all too hard. And parents convinced me to move back home and do economics at James Cook Uni, and I was like, okay. And anyway, we're driving home with mum, and I was probably like an hour south of Rocky on the drive home because we were taking the car back from Melbourne to Townsville, and we were just talking about it. I was like, I don't know, no beef on James Cook because I got my physio degree there, but I was like, economics isn't going to be the same there compared to Melbourne Uni, right? Like my lecturer at Melbourne Uni wrote the textbook, so you're
probably in the right class there.
Yeah, I was like, this is pretty good. So I was like, I feel like I should do something different. And anyway, to give context to this, my grandma was a physio.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and I never got to meet her, and she died of brain cancer when my mum was about my age, and she was like remarkable. Like she graduated Sydney Uni in at the end of World War II, and then went and became a physio in London, and like married in her late 30s, and like for that time, as I'm sure we can all think about, it's pretty forward. So an amazing woman. Anyway, so I looked at mum and I went, you know what? And in year 11, I was pretty interested in sports science and stuff, and was like, I want to do physio. She looked at me and like nearly stopped the car. And I was like, no, that's what we're going to do. And so anyway, got back to Townsville. She was super stoked and kind of like a bit spooked by it all because like I never got to meet my grandma, but I feel like, when you like look back in your family, you go, why am I different to the rest of like my dad, my mum? No one really
Where do I fit in here?
Yeah. Where do I fit in? And then I look back and I'm like, if I got to meet her, I feel like I'd understand why you are a bit the way you are. Kind of
cool.
It's pretty cool. Hey?
Yeah. So took a bit of time, but transferred across and got into physio at James Cook. And then that was a bit of a journey. Some of that degree had a couple of hiccups through it, you guys know. But I struggled with cardiorespiratory. So physio is a big degree for those who don't know. Most of us think of you've done your ACL in footy and you go into your local physio and you after
been there.
Yeah. Oh, yep. Yeah. Know the process. Yeah.
Yeah, nightmare.
Exactly, yeah. And for those of us who've seen hospitals or stroke wards or stuff, there's different types of physio. And so the main distinctions are musculoskeletal, cardiorespiratory, and neuro. And I was super keen on musculoskeletal, still am. But cardiorespiratory is pretty hard. So that's like when you're the hospital physio and you're like, and they're probably the most important physios at the moment with this virus stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Getting people up in ICU, walking, making sure that your breathing's okay. Like, aside from the ICU docs or doctors, like and the nurse, like that sort of quartet's the next important person.
Gee, that's not something I would have thought about, given what's going on at the moment, that there's, cardiorespiratory physios in hospitals helping people who are recovering, because there are people recovering.
Yeah, there are
from,
quite a lot
from COVID.
Yeah,
get them up and walking and get them going again.
I saw the best video the other day from an ICU ward in the UK, and there was this lady and she got stood up because, like, it's rough. Like, the reason why ICU is so scary and why we're so freaked out by this virus is because when you're in ICU, you get intubated and you've got a machine breathing for you. And, like, if any of us have, unfortunately, like, you never want to really see an ICU ward unless you have to, or it's your work and you're helping people, but it's rough. Like, I've seen it at Royal Brisbane Women's Hospital, and, like, people just stuck there and they can't move, they've got burns or whatever, and so standing someone up with a breathing machine on is a big deal. It's like, it's a Herculean event.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're a shocking place. My granddad was in there a few years ago when he was trying to check out when he was fucking, his lungs were giving up on him, and, like, we flew down there and saw him and we were like, holy, this is full on. Like, it was, it was serious. And he's got the nurse behind the perspex glass is just like, that's just their job, is just to sit there and make sure that they're going. It's full on, it's a heavy, heavy thing.
God. Really, and we're lucky. I feel like, I mean, particularly in Queensland, like, our medical system, like, when I got to see that on uni placements, so good. Like, the ICU ward at Royal Brisbane's awesome.
I'm definitely grateful we've got it.
Yeah, it's awesome. But anyway, so I wasn't so good at cardio resp.
Yeah, right.
And long story short, I failed it twice. And then, when I came to redoing it on the third time, that's when my mum started to get sick. And she, early on in physio, she had a bit of a hiccup with her health. And it's such a shock to the system, kind of like we're all feeling now when, like, your normal routine and your expectations is like, oh, this is going to happen, 2020 is going to be all good. And then all of a sudden, boom, we're all stuck at home or trying to traverse.
Shit just changes very suddenly.
Your expectation of what life is just fucking instantaneously changes.
Just goes,
like, that's not what this is supposed to be, is it? And then it's just like, the fuck's going on here?
Yeah. And, like, when you're 22, you don't expect to at 2 a.m. in the morning be driving your mum to the emergency ward because she's got chest pain. And then it ends up being that wasn't heart related, but she ends up having, like, this massive tumour in her gallbladder or bile duct. And within 2 weeks, the GP's saying, get your affairs in order, and we're all going, wow.
Is this her first symptom that she had? Like, this?
Yeah, she it was really rough because Dad was away on work, and he travels a bit, and I was just like, got to take her to the hospital, blah blah, figure it out. There was chest pain, couldn't really figure out what was going on, and then they freak out. They do all these scans and they pick up that and they go, whoa, what's that? And yeah. And luckily, speaking of being grateful for the medical system, this was the first round. She got through, it was good. But Dad, absolute legend, took her down to Brisbane, and I'm going to probably forget his name now, which is terrible, but I'm pretty sure it's Tom O'Rourke. He's one of Australia's best liver surgeons, and he ended up cutting 80% of Mum's liver out with her bile duct and gallbladder, just because it was, like, close enough to not do chemo. And so with cancer, you generally, I'm no expert, but, like, you generally go, like, surgery. Then if it's too widespread, chemo, or if it's local enough, radio, like with breast cancer, radiotherapy. Anyway, so they cut it out, and then, like, that's a pretty big deal. Luckily, your liver grows back, which is awesome. Unlike other things.
Yeah, which is one thing that I only learned on House of Cards again, watching it the other day, because Frank Underwood's liver, grows back. But yes.
Is this legit?
Yeah, your liver does grow back.
Fuck me.
Yeah, I know,
it's pretty
crazy.
impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah, good old resilient livers.
Yeah, wow.
And like it grows back, but unfortunately through all that we had a bit of, like, this is why I got a bit of a beef with health, right, and the yoga stuff, and it's what's sort of become a big focus for everything I do with my life, is that Mum had a lot of complications afterwards because of the food she was told to eat. So, like, no beef on Sustagen, but they told her to, like, eat all of that and all the stupid hospital food, and she ends up getting fatty liver disease with the 20% of the liver that she's got left, and her skin turns yellow, jaundice. Hopefully no one has to see that in their life, and she ends up looking like a Simpsons character. And then it's all because of this food. And so, anyway, she struggles to walk, blah, blah, blah. It's like a 3-month journey to get her back to some level of normality. She moves back to Townsville. And then it gets good again. And then sort of fast forward to me trying to get cardio done that third time. And she was like going great guns. It was actually quite funny because like Dad and Mum would go out to field days out west, like Richmond, and Dad would get made fun of because Mum was doing F45. She was like in a swimming squad. She was doing like 4Ks 3 times a week. She was looking awesome, like bit of a glam, and Dad was punching. Probably always was, but and they're like, Charlie, like, well, you got to pick up your game. Like, Eddie's looking pretty good. And then and then all of a sudden she just gets this back pain. And still to this day, I'll remember this as a physio because you've always got to keep out a look for these things called red flags. You know, so when something's not good, like a sign to something more sinister. And she just kept getting this back pain. Luckily, she worked for a railway company, and they had physio there once a week, but they couldn't figure it out. And anyway, it got so bad we ended up going into the hospital for some reason. You forget because there's so many trips, and it had come back. Cholangiocarcinoma is the name of the cancer. Pretty rare. And funnily enough, at that point, Dad had this big get together with this Without a Ribbon Foundation that you guys would have heard him talk about. And he'd done a big bike ride around Australia, and by the time he got back, we'd figured out that she was really unwell again, which was like a bad end of the trip. And she, lots of stuff happening. I don't want to bore anyone, but she got diagnosed again, and this time they were like, she was really fragile, struggling to walk and stuff like that. And the surgery, her gastroenterologist was chatting with the surgeons down in Brisbane, and they were like, oh man, we don't know if this is going to work. And it's basically a 3-month D-Day, or 2-month, like now it's happening. Like, she's probably not going to survive, guys. And I actually remember that, like, speaking of when the rug gets pulled out, sitting in this ward before she got transferred to palliative, we didn't know yet. And I was sitting there with one of my best mates, Aaron, and then Mum was in the bed, and I'd go in there every night after uni just to hang out. Even just lie there and watch TV with her. The gastroenterologist came in and said, like, look, these are the options, and blah, blah, blah. And Mum and I both looked and said, well, like, what are the chances that she can get surgery, or what are the chances she can survive this? And it was like, there's none really. Like, you're too fragile, and just that moment where you know. And I'm kind of grateful for it because a lot of people lose people like that, and I got a chance to slowish say goodbye. And then within I don't know, I lost track of time in that period because if anyone's dealt with that, they probably time just sort of warps. And within like a month or two, within a month and a half, she was gone.
Holy shit.
Fuck.
That's insane.
I mean, how did you... the worst part is the fucking toll on the story of like, it's clear you're better. She's working
roller
out.
coaster.
She's gone out and seen people that know she's been sick. They're like, fuck, you look fantastic. And then you've got to go through that again.
Yeah.
How...
it's a horrible feeling.
It's crushing.
And luckily when you can compare that feeling to any other stuff you have to go through, you've got a good comparator, but it's I wouldn't wish it on anyone. It's really horrible.
It's tragic.
And it was a bad time too, because like I remember we were in like exams the day after she died, and like
cardiorespiratory.
Yep.
Oh God.
I remember walking in. To be honest, like my story is not that bad because like through all of this, I was thinking about this today and just going like without family, like I've got the best dad and sister you could ever have but mates, I had another friend, Aruna. You guys, you'll eventually meet him. He's practically a brother. Dad calls him his brown son. He's a...
Of course he fucking
Because that's what Dad does. Aruna's one of my best mates from physio, and he was living with us, and he lived with us through all of it. Mum came home and was palliative. We were like, I mean, speaking about like pain relieving drugs today with you, Dan, and like endone. Mum was on like an astronomical amount of endone. She was like, you know, out of this world. You really couldn't talk to her towards the end, and just walking around the house. And anyway, my mate Aruna, best mate, he had to walk into his oral exam, like we call it a viva, and in like medical professions like physio, OT, doctors, all that sort of stuff, you get given this scenario, and in 15 minutes you got to tell the examiner, usually a lecturer, what you're going to do. And if it's good, pass, tick. If it's bad, do it again or come back next year. And Aruna had to do it like 12 hours later after she passed away at like nearly midnight, and Aruna had to walk in the next day, and then I had to walk in the day after. But he and I mean, to the head of physio's credit, Anne Jones, she like pushed a tissue box towards me and said, "You don't have to do this." And I was like, "Nah, Mum wanted me to." Because all through palliative when she was with it, she was like, "You're going to keep studying," because like go back to that car trip coming home. This is a pretty meaningful thing for both of us. And through all the struggles of failing and redoing it, she was like, "No, this is like, you've got to do this. You're going to be a physio. You're going to be a physio." And I didn't believe it. But then at that point I was like, "No, going to do it." And thanks to the help of Chelsea Crow, who was up helping us out, she was helping me study, helping Aruna and I study. We got the 2 best marks for that Viva exam out of the grade. And I still to this day don't know how. I blame it on Mum. I reckon she intervened, but I'm not like a overly religious person, but yeah.
No,
weird.
No,
that happens.
I definitely believe that. You reckon there was greater powers at play that day. You've got your grandma, and suddenly you've got your mother right there with you.
Yeah. You literally, it was like that kind of Harry Potter moment where they're behind you.
Shit,
and
that's
like,
powerful. That gives me tingle. That shit fucking gets me going, eh?
Yeah.
We say it all the time, like we'll have shit happen. And we've said it on this podcast before, like we'll go to a meeting or meet someone or whatever.
I wrote about it today.
Yeah.
That mate of yours must be up there pulling some strings and
like
having a laugh.
Dan's mate, he's just up there just going, fuck, they need help over here. Like, you know, it's just...
Because it just keeps happening.
Like,
I literally just finished writing that in our Barallan prison venture today, and I was like, fuck, same thing. It's just like there's,
something going on.
Sometimes there's shit going on.
Yeah.
But it's enough just to know that you must be doing the right thing. Like that would have given you and Aruna like such the biggest
power lift.
Yeah, just a,
And that's what was weird, because like grief for me was really interesting. Like through that period after she died, I felt really resilient, and I did feel like the wind was behind my sails. I was upset, but I don't know. You guys talk about this. This is why you guys are here at Men's Mental Health, but we really struggle with expressing and feeling emotions. And Dad and I talk about this, and we struggle with it ourselves. But for that first 3 months, it was like you're in shock, and like everyone around me, my poor sister and Dad were really like, he's good. He lets it go. He feels his feelings. He's a pretty forward-thinking bloke for his era, and I was like, problem solving mode. I'm sure everyone's
being a bloke.
Yeah, and you just like got to do things. Right,
being
get
a bloke.
this done, going into placement, got to do this. Right, Sammy needs help, and I need to be the one who's got my shit together.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know when the moment was. I think it was 3 months later. I was on a meditation retreat, because after India, that all had a big impact, and yoga and physio sort of coalesced for me into this unified path that I'm still walking today. And I go on these retreats where you practice the meditation, so it becomes becomes natural, like walking, like doing anything, playing guitar. And one night I just let go, and all of a sudden it all came through. And it's weird, like when you don't fully understand grief, like the experience of it, to let go. And just turn
the tap on.
Yep, the tap. That's it. It's almost like a river.
Yeah, bang.
Yeah, it just needs a fraction.
So it's like a cleansing moment or something, isn't it? It's just like uncontrollable, right? Like
it is. Yeah. It is. It's almost cathartic, and that's like, and it's something I still struggle with, but I make a point of like when that feeling comes up, just to let it happen, because it's, our culture, and we know it as blokes, as Australian men. there's this stoicism that sort of has come down from that post-World War II generation, just toughen up. And they've got a spine. They were strong men, but emotionally they were a bit traumatized. And so we haven't been taught to
They weren't connected with it.
They weren't. Yeah. And they weren't helped. Like, to be honest, we didn't have, like, I'm really lucky to be, to have my girlfriend, Rebecca, who's a psychologist, and just not just only her as a person, but her professional skills with, like, just, there's so many tools out there. Luckily, I live with one, but to be able to help me. But we all have people we need to talk to. But there's skills that we can all learn as people, as blokes, to let this stuff pass through really quite easily, because you feel good when you let it all happen. Right? I mean, you guys have felt that.
For you, was the grief for you like it just happened that one time, or has it been like a continuous sort of thing, like ever since, that you've still sort of process as time sort of goes on?
At Mum's funeral, he's pretty much my uncle. He went on the bike trip with Dad. Steve Cowley said, and this is a man in a family that have dealt with a lot of grief, and he said this analogy that I feel like fits to everyone, and to me to this day, he said there's waves of grief, and initially it's like a hurricane. There's storms, and like it just feels like you're being pumped. It's like this massive waves hitting you again and again and again, and then they lessen off, but they never stop. And every now and then you'll get hit. And like just the other night, I was chatting with my neighbour, and she was saying how she lost her mum from cancer as well, like when she was about my age, and she's a bit older, and she was just saying how she sometimes feels like there's a push, right, just like that she gets a push from her to do something or to make a decision, like, oh, you should do this, or if she doesn't do something, she feels like it's like her mum's angry with it. And then afterwards I was like, yeah, wow. And then I thought, am I listening to her? Like, if she's up there, if she's here or whatever, or like, am I listening to that part of her that's still with me? And I just walked in, Beck wasn't home, and I lost it. But it felt really good, because I guess when no one's around you, it's easier to do that, because you're not bound to the social norms.
You can be a blubbering mess and you can ugly cry and not have to worry about what you look like.
Yeah, exactly. No one's looking, and it was a proper ugly cry. But
yeah, right.
It clears you out, and
100%.
Yeah. And I felt like I felt like it was. I don't know what it sounds a bit. I don't know what the right word is. A bit too contrived, but you feel like you're honouring the person when you let that happen, or you're honouring the experience, whatever it was horrible to make you cry or to make you feel upset. I felt like when I let that go, it was like Mum was sitting there nodding at me, going like, yeah.
Well, there's a lot of energy going both ways, I think, isn't there? Like, love is a very powerful thing, and, I think grief is just probably an expression of how big that love was, just coming out of you somehow, right? Like,
yeah, big time. And you never, like, I mean, I always found it weird, but Mum always said that she never stopped missing, and Dad said this too about his parents, like, they never stopped missing them. And now 3 years down the track, like, we're nearly coming up to the anniversary on May 10th, I feel like I'm really processing it now. And like, for anyone out there, it should go away, because I don't think it should. And if it's more intense, good, okay, let it happen. That's because I struggle with that, but luckily with the yoga stuff and those ideas and the people I have around me, they're like, just let it happen.
Yeah, well, that's what I sort of want to go into is, we spoke about it before we came on air. It was sort of the coping mechanisms that people choose when, like, this is a major event and you're a young man and you're at uni and, you're the eldest son and
weight of the world on your shoulders.
You've got a lot of shit going on, right? And you're trying to pass uni, and then your mum is like just ripped away from you, right?
Yep.
You've got every right to just fall into having the shits with the world. Fucking, it's against me. I'm just going to hit the bottle, get on the drugs, and just fucking leave this space. You know what I mean? But you chose a completely different path, and like what? And why was that? Why did you choose what you did?
And it comes back to that, like, I wish I knew that stuff when I read that Buddhist book. It was, and this is what I feel like I want to give to every bloke, every person, is this, we always feel uncomfortable and we all want to feel good, but we've got this mistaken idea that we can always feel good, or that we can get rid of bad feelings when we feel them, like that uncomfortable And it can be anger, it can be sadness, it can be anything. And it's a physical sensation, that sensation that's stuck in your chest. And what I was given was a framework to go, if you feel that without restriction, without labeling, without judgment, just the raw, take it on, like let it pass through you. So it's the most courageous thing I feel like I've ever been taught to do. Like Beck talks about this a lot with her clients, and I think Brene Brown's a great person that speaks about this, like with her TED Talk and stuff. But this ability just to feel and be vulnerable was really freeing. And it was only because I've gone through that and practiced it with a yoga thing, particularly with meditation, because you don't deny anything. When you're sitting there, the whole point is to be with what is, because it's not always good. It's not always rainbows and butterflies. And what you're really developing isn't a great mindset for the day to kick goals. That's a side effect. What you're developing is a steadiness and a cushion to the crap that we all have to feel.
And a big bit of resilience, I suppose.
Yeah, that resilience. There's a word I really like that sort of, I feel like trumps resilience, and it comes from this book over it. It's called Anti-Fragile. And it's like, because resilience is like something that stands strong in the face of it. It's like it just stays tough.
Yeah.
Whereas anti-fragility is, I really resonate with this. It's like it gets stronger in the face of stress. And I feel like that's what in my head was pushing me with any of these. And it's like, it's not just yoga. You can do this in the gym and then go and see your psychologist and have the same effect, depending on your intent. But you come out feeling like you're happier. But it's tough because when you can get overwhelmed by these sensations, and I do every day, and you want to take the easy route because we all want we all want to take the easiest option. Oh, it's just so much easier to just crack open a can and chill out and watch Netflix and just numb. But the problem is that a denied sensation, a denied feeling that you don't pay attention to, in my experience, tends to intensify.
Manifests, yeah.
So what do you think it is? It's kind of like a lot of people, particularly blokes, are kind of scared of facing different kinds of emotions that they do feel. And I suppose that is when it's like, well, fuck, this is a bit scary. Like,
whoa, soldier boy, what's that?
Yeah, woo, hang on, let's just fucking drink that one away.
Yeah, I still to this day I'm trying to figure that out. Like, why is it scary? There's a story that I got. My yoga teacher and Zen teacher, he's a Zen monk, and 2 teachers back from him was this guy, and this is a story that really encapsulates it for me. There's this old Japanese monk named Kodo Sawaki.
Of course his name's Kodo Sawaki.
Yeah, and he was called the homeless Kodo, and he walked across Japan. He didn't like being in a monastery. He was a bit of a rebel. Anyway, this bloke got like so much stuff happened to him. I think it was in the Russo-Japanese War in like the early 20th century, he got shot and a bullet went through the back of his head and split his tongue. And he ended up like, I'm not sure whether I'm combining 2 stories here, but anyway, they can be. And he ended up under this pile of like a bunch of dead bodies trying to like get through and not be caught. And he said, like later on in his life teaching meditation as a Buddhist monk, that sitting in meditation and practicing, being with his own thoughts, feelings, experience, was more scary than being under a pile of dead bodies with like a bullet wound in his head. And I was like,
a split tongue.
Yeah,
a bit of a lizard tongue going on there.
And so apparently he had like a lisp for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
But my yoga teacher, like Mark will say that. My teacher will say he'll like, it's no small task, but I guess like anything that we all, like blokes rise to the challenge. I think it's part of what any, not just blokes, but people, but it's something that men tend to direct themselves towards is challenge and growth. And like I feel like when it's framed from that perspective rather than this vulnerability thing, that you're weak for expressing feelings, because it shows, I don't know, maybe it's because I don't know, why do you guys think you're
shifting
weak?
from the norm? It's not what people do. I think it's, I was like, a big thing you just said then was like growth, you know what I mean? Like you and I see it all the time on Instagram. It's just like all the stuff you're reading, you know what I mean? Like it's fucking cool. And like, it's like, I've just realized this today. You said something the other day, it was around nutrition. It was like, anyone that thought this, that's actually wrong. I've just found the answer and it's just here. And I was just like,
I love that stuff.
You know, that's awesome.
Yeah.
But that's like a growth thing. And I was talking to my mate last night, Cam. I was just like, you know, at the moment, like I'm just fucking want to absorb as much fucking information as I can. But I never used to be like that. I used to be the guy that was like, I fucking know everything and fuck you. You know what I mean? It was easier then because I didn't want to show vulnerability.
Oh,
you know
man,
what I mean?
good.
And I just felt that I was creating this fake fucking world to try and impress other people. It's just all bullshit.
It's an outer shell.
I feel like a lot of people right now, like given what's going on globally, are, you know, self-isolating or whatever. Everyone's stuck, like lives have changed, but so many people are stuck in their own existence right now where they actually have to self-reflect and think about, you know, what's going on and how they're feeling. And it is scary and a lot of people are forced into it. But, you know, you said it before, blokes rise to the occasion. People rise to the occasion, but sometimes you just got to be thrown in the deep end.
Big time, yeah.
Sometimes you just got to be chucked in the fucking deep end, and
Yeah.
you know, you got two choices. Like,
Because I mean, you're who you are through your experiences. You know what I mean? Like it would probably be a lot different if your mother hadn't passed away.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah,
And
yeah.
we wouldn't be here if Dan's mate hadn't passed away.
there's so
It's just
many
like,
things,
so much shit.
so many things that happen in play that you connect the dots. And like you said before, I thought it was really important what you said before when you were having that conversation with your neighbour about, oh, am I doing, you know, what she would want me to do or they would want me to do? That ability to self-reflect, that is the part. Like, that's the key bit there. It's not whether you're doing what they had mapped out for you. It's that ability to even think that, oh, shit, am I doing the right thing?
It's not the answer, it's the question.
It's the question, yeah.
Big time, yeah. That
Love
life well
it.
examined.
That's a Ben. You can just put that bit in.
There's that 15-second Instagram cut.
Yeah, that is so true. Yeah, I haven't had it framed like that before. The question, that is it. Yeah.
Yeah, and not enough people sort of do that. And I think that's why looking at COVID and everything that's going on at the moment, where I was talking to you earlier, where, you know, when you came in, that a lot of people have been chucked into the deep end now. And like, unfortunately, so many people have lost jobs now, which sucks. And financial stress and everything that comes along with that is just a nightmare. And, you know, I feel for so many of those people. There's a lot of people who would have been in jobs that they were sort of just, you know, getting by and they sort of hated it or whatever, but they
I
were
don't
just
want to go
doing
in
it.
there again.
But now they will be forced to do something different, and there will be a lot of silver linings that come out of this for a lot of people, because it's not until you have a drastic change in your life, an event like this that forces change, and change is good. You know, like,
Thrive on it.
you got to get comfortable being uncomfortable, and
There's another one.
and now
Clip. It's so good.
Wait, can you stop cutting me off?
Sorry. It's so. I mean, there's just so much juice coming out of this. Please keep squeezing your lemon. It's great.
That's gone. I've lost it. We nailed it. But it's good. It's good shit. Like, I like the fact that apart from all the suffering, which sucks, there will be silver linings to this, and people may not be able to see it right now. And like you, at the time, you might not have, you wouldn't have expected to go into that exam and ace it.
No, I was like staring down the barrel.
Like, it's so many things, and you find a way. Like, humans are, you know, we are anti-fragile.
We're here for a reason.
We're not made of glass, and you know, it's just about getting uncomfortable, throwing yourself in the deep end, trying new things, like putting yourself out there. It's powerful shit.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that's fucking awesome. I'm loving this. Yes,
You feel so fulfilled anyway, though, because I feel like when you're really on the edge on that, that's where the juice of life comes out. Like the lights are dimmer and everything feels less. I don't know, there's that, it's like, I remember a yoga teacher saying, it's like you want to become a connoisseur of life, like, because the scarcest resource is time, not money, not anything else. And each moment you want to be able to take in like it's the tastiest
morsel
ever.
Oh, yeah.
Just like this conversation, these bright coloured shirts. Like, how good is this?
The best podcast room on Riverside Place.
Mate.
I've given out an address.
Don't come here. Nah, I'm joking.
So good.
But
Southside.
the one thing I've been thinking about recently with everyone being in lockdown is that a lot of people are going to feel uncomfortable with their relationships as well. Like, whether or not that's mates they're living with or if that's their wife or girlfriend. Like, a lot of the time, it's easy to just get up, go and do something, get out of the house and get out of that environment. But now we're locked in there. So it's like, it's interesting.
Little things give you the shits
Little
that didn't give you the shits before.
Oh,
Yeah, but there'd be a lot of
Stop
relationships.
sitting there on the couch. Get up, you
Move. the idea that a lot of people now are going to figure out more, not just about themselves, but also relationships that they've got. And there'd be a lot of people going through some pretty interesting relationships at the moment.
For sure.
We're all through it. I reckon, each of us going home tonight, we're probably lucky we can still drive around a bit in Queensland, but my girlfriend's working from home, and, we've had to sit and calm down and talk through some stuff where we've both gone off and been like, why is that mug in the wrong place, or why is this not done, or something stupid. And
Mate, that's completely human. That's that happens. You know what I mean? That's just sort of like,
it's your ability to be able to sort of process that and kind of work through it that is like builds a lot of solidarity, right? Like
that's it, mate.
When the mug is in the wrong place, sometimes it's easier just to say, fuck, sorry.
Yeah, literally.
I didn't mean anything by it. It was just,
gotcha.
Do it again the next day.
Just to poke him. No, but Russell Brand said this really well, because he's a big proponent of all this stuff, and in those moments where you're about to flip, right? I feel like this is where this stuff comes to, from yoga and meditation or just mindfulness in general, it comes to the fore because you get a decision. Whereas before, like we were talking about this with pain and your dad, we've all had this when you just, everything's so uncomfortable, you just want to, and you flip and you get angry or you say something. Whereas when you train in this stuff and paying attention and asking those questions that you said, Dan, you get a choice, and it's like time slows down, and your pissed off wife or girlfriend standing there in front of you going, what? And you just go, and I get this moment, and I'm choosing it as much as I can, where I go, yes, I'm sorry. And you take the calmer response, and then you watch what they do, and all of a sudden, because you feed off each other, we all do, the situation de-escalates.
Oh yeah,
I know. And you're just like, wow, I didn't think that would happen.
Solved it.
Got it. Tick.
It's contagious. Karma's contagious, right?
Yes. Oh, Matt, that's a new shirt logo, I reckon.
Yeah. One thing, I remember when we first had a beer with your old man.
Yep.
I remember he was telling us about a trip that you did overseas to a meditation retreat or something like that. It was sort of, you meditated for an extremely long amount of time, and it was sort of like
10 days. I think, was it the Vipassana one?
I can't remember. He was saying something like, you said you came
If it was
out
10 days, that was probably the one.
Yeah, that was probably it.
Probably. I did a couple of those. So, some of the listeners might know about this because it's pretty popular now, because there's one up in Pomona. I've done a couple of these now. Now I go to Zen ones, but these retreats, you go into a centre, and funnily enough, I had to come back to Australia to learn meditation properly. I went to this centre in the Blue Mountains in Blackheath, and it's this Vipassana centre where you go and it's kind of like pay what you can afterwards, pay it forward for the next people so they can come, whatever you can. And there's room for 50 men and 50 women, and if you're new to it, you get put in a bunk room and you have to be quiet for 10 days. No speaking, no formal contact unless you have to. There's a teacher, there's a manager in case, something goes wrong or someone needs to call in. And for 10 hours a day, for 10 days, nearly almost, you, in the Vipassana course, you stay still, and you, for the first 3 days, do a particular meditation technique where you're just basically just following the breath and trying to keep your attention on the end of your nose. So you're training
for 10 hours.
Not continuously. So you get them. The longest would be a 1 hour period.
Okay.
But that capacity to, and I guess this is where I really learned it, because it was like, guerrilla training. And Dad always thought it was weird, and I felt like it was nice, because one time we had this family lunch and there was this gung-ho, awesome, female Air Force pilot, decorated servicewoman, and she said, yeah, I've done one of those. And I was like, oh, cool. What did you think? And she looked and she said, to everyone in the room and on the dinner table, and she's like, yeah, it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. It was worse than anything in the Air Force. And I looked at Dad and I went,
what do you reckon? What do you reckon, mate?
There you go.
So
you've gone out.
So your old boy's probably
so
out at field days and shit, and they're like, "Oh, how's Ollie doing?"
He gets the weird stories.
He's in the.
I don't even know if he says anything anymore.
He's in the Blue Mountains, not talking.
I don't know, he's breathing or some shit.
sitting in a dark room willingly.
God, yeah, that's so funny.
So I suppose first thing that comes to my mind with that is if it's an hour and then you get a break, but you're not talking, it's torturous in a way because you know you're going back into that shit again over and over and over and over again for 10 days. Is it just like
torturous or calm? Like,
but you get both. So I mean, we've all heard that saying you're your own worst enemy, but that intensity and that's it. Like that battle right there was the hardest bit for me. It's for some people it's physical pain, and I dealt with that a bit, but thanks to yoga, a bit more flexibility. You can sit there, it's all good. But that mental warfare, it almost feels like. And how much you construct it every day, but it becomes most apparent there because you have no escape, because the conversation brings your awareness out of that lower, like the depths of your consciousness, and you have to sit there and go, oh wow, there's a part of that's a thought, and you learn to become metacognitive, like you learn to look at the thought as something separate from yourself, and that's where that decision I talked about before comes in, and this is the best thing, because particularly for blokes, particularly for anyone, to go, oh, that's just a thought, like that's just a cloud, or that's just something passing by. It's not me, like it's not something that I have to own. And so much of our thinking is, and so when you're battled with that and you're dealing with these, oh God, there's 7 more hours and then there's 9 more days, it's psychologically taxing. But then I always say in my classes, and this is something I've just been handed down, it's not mine, but they say in yoga there's 2 wings for the bird to fly, for it to work, for the engine to move. There's dedicated practice, abhyasas, the old Sanskrit word, effort, discipline, trying something, doing something, and then there's vairagya, that ability to let go, just surrender, let the feelings happen, let the thought. And I just went, okay, well, I can't escape. And a great book that looks at this is like Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. He was a psychiatrist that survived World War II in concentration camps, and he talks about this, and he says, like, it was the people who had this sense of inner resilience, inner meaning, and an ability to let go and not let their thoughts override them, where they had that final freedom that couldn't be taken from them. And so in those moments, not like far less grand, not a Nazi concentration camp, I just went, that's a thought, I'm here for a reason, and I trust the process. And then it was like an opening to a new world. Like inside there was another level of calm. Your heart rate would slow down, all these pleasant sensations. And you realise why people shave their heads and don't marry, because you're like, this is pretty positive. It feels really good and it's really meaningful.
In a way, I feel like it's in a more layman's way of explaining, kind of like controlling the controllables to a degree. Like if you just sort of let yourself go to, what your environment is, well, then you can become at ease with it and start to kind of, be able to handle it, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, that's it. Like, what's the old serenity prayer? Like, give me I can control what I can and let go of what I can't. And that's what we all have to come back to. I come back to, and it's a constant effort practice. And in those moments, like I'll still go on these retreats to train that capacity, because it just gives you this. It translates so well, like, and it surprises you. Not that you, I mean, everyone sits or does things for different reasons. Like they go to a church or they go to a gym or they go and do something for different reasons, but the effects come on really late. So it's not like exercise where it's like, oh, I'm noticing I'm getting a bit fitter, I can lift a heavier barbell when I'm doing my deadlifts, but then 6 months down the line something happens, or like when my mum died and I just felt stable, because part of the ideas and stuff I'd learnt was saying, I got it tattooed on my right arm, is like everything is gonna change. Change is real. Impermanence.
Everything's impermanent.
And that's a good thing, because if it wasn't, we'd all be stuck in just boring. Like it'd just be frozen.
Just be shit.
Yeah, it's boring.
But it sort of starts to speak to this idea of discomfort.
Sorry, you're right.
Imagine if we were still back at that old office. You know what I mean? And I'm glad that
Give
changed.
me strength.
But yeah, I suppose it speaks to a lot of this idea of discomfort and, kind of getting comfortable with that idea of, change and impermanence, as you say. And once you can accept that, I suppose you start to really, savor those moments. Like you said, you just said it, like that morsel, everything that
you've learned, that's a learnt thing now. You know what that is.
And it becomes default. That's the thing, because you want this
You're
stuff
retraining
to
yourself.
you want it to be accessible in every moment, and you want it, it's far less uncomfortable to choose that discomfort voluntarily. That's a Joe Rogan thing, I think, than to let it happen to you. To get out and wake up at 6 a.m. in the morning and sit on my meditation cushion and then go to a gym or get on my yoga mat or exercise. It's uncomfortable in small amounts, but if I don't do that, I'm faced with discomfort anyway, because it's all like there's a level of suffering that's inevitable. But if you face it, and I still have to, I'm not good at this, it's still a practice, but if I face it, it becomes so much less.
Fuck yeah, that's what it is. It's like not hiding from the fact it's never going to happen. It's just like, let's go out and put ourselves through a bit here so we're better for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's interesting because it's a lot of that letting go. It's also like quite a lot of like the Buddhist part of it's like the meditation and letting go, and then like the whole thing with Christianity is like forgiveness, and like it's just so like essential. Quite a circular type thing. Is everything in that space. It's sort of all about letting go. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's surrender. I mean, I there's a word that I hated growing up because I was in a Catholic primary school, and I don't know, my nerdy little brain didn't like it, and I was like, it just doesn't make sense. But now, faith, I didn't like it, but I've come back to it now, and my teacher talks about it a lot because I think we all have it and use it in some way, and it comes in with that surrender, because at some point your little ego and story about yourself needs to be dropped, and you need to have a sense of faith in whatever, your friends, your family, your team, your workplace, your, particular religion, and then you let go and go into something bigger and more meaningful.
Accept it.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
But that's what, I mean, geez, we're getting deep here. But like, when you go into religion, and so many people I'm the same. I grew up, I went to Catholic schools growing up. I was an altar boy when I was a kid. I had elderly.
Jeez, have you got a photo of that?
Probably somewhere.
Oh, mate.
I had elderly.
Loretta, if you're listening, email it through.
She won't be listening. But when I was young, it was like, religion is, this is God is a real thing, and you need to be doing this, and I feel like through that, at the time when I was young and impressionable, I really took that on.
Yeah, you do.
But it sort of went away, like when went through that. Well, it did go away in the late teens and early 20s, all that sort of stuff. When you start to go on a bit of a journey of self-discovery or whatever, but the fundamentals to it sort of stay the same. It's not just about that particular religion. It's kind of general, metaphor for life. And
you see,
and you start to get
everything.
Yeah, and you start to get that perspective. And so when there's a lot of people out there who, really bag religion and this, that, and the other, it's probably mostly like anything because they don't quite understand it. It's not about, I suppose, preaching and Bible bashing, but more a bigger, like a greater faith. And a bit of an understanding around existence, and it settles people, I think.
We're anxious monkeys, and we need something to calm us down.
We do.
And for some people, like I like my falafel kebabs, and not everyone likes falafel kebabs, but we all need something to calm us down, and to give us a sense of direction.
But I think that the interesting thing is because my wife's very religious, and she always says the thing. The beauty for her with you being a Christian is that she's not putting herself at the top of the tree.
Bingo.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's
and that is what so many of us do, is we do put ourselves at the top of the tree, and it's just like, fuck it, we got to be everything. You know what I mean? But when you can show that vulnerability and accept and sit back and ground yourself, you know what I mean? It's pretty cool.
No, that's that's probably it. That's the nail on the head there. That line. It's that ability to. I mean, your last guest said it. It took him the 20 trips on Kokoda, and I just loved it. And he said that then it became about about the people I took, and I was like, and I feel like that's when life's working. Like the Dalai Lama has this line where he's like, smart, selfish people know that to be happy, you got to help others, because that's where the best feeling, that's where the best fulfillment is.
Yeah.
Whereas dumb, selfish people think about themselves.
I love that. If you can't help yourself, help someone else, right?
Yes,
if you can't help yourself, if you can't find happiness, just go out and find a way to help someone else, because that's where shit really starts to tickle your pickle.
Yep.
Yeah,
yep.
but it reciprocates too.
Oh, so good.
You know what I mean? Like when you the other day, like we hadn't been back to the old office. Well, sorry, my mum hadn't dropped in to pick up the Ollie return orders from the old office. So
What are you doing?
she will be listening.
Love your work, Sue.
Love your work, Mum. The orders hadn't come back. The return orders hadn't come back, and I hadn't refunded people. And it was a slow start to the day of sales yesterday, and I knew there was more returns there than we'd made in sales. And I was like, fuck, I don't really want to do this.
Yeah.
But I was like, I'm going to fucking bite the bullet. I'm going to do it. Fucking literally, as I did the last one, an order came through that reciprocated everything that I just refunded.
Whoa.
And I was just like, fuck, this stuff happens all the time. And the same thing, like a couple of months ago, I hadn't made the TX donation. And I was like, oh, fuck, I got to do the TX donation. Made it. And we were already pretty short on change because we just put a new order in. And then, we had like the 3 biggest days we'd ever had. It was it's just shit happens. Like, it's just crazy, you know?
There's a real synchronicity is that word.
Yeah.
To it all.
It's funny. It's like representative of how so many people put off a lot of issues in their life or hide from issues because they're scared of the outcome.
Oh yeah,
you
every
know,
day.
and it's just like rip the fucking Band-Aid off.
Yeah.
Like
It's got to like I had to do the returns.
can
I
either-
had to do the donation. It was either like do it then or it's going to get worse. Like, so just do it.
you can either torture yourself or just rip
But it
off.
comes back, and it's like the thing that I've heard a lot of times is like Tony Robbins that was me tapping. When Tony Robbins was
The man.
like he was on the bones of his ass. Like when he first was, he was trying to prop his mum up, and she was like ripping him off, and then he left, and he was at a cafe, I think he sort of says, and he had like $10 left, and he saw this mum and daughter there that was having breakfast, and the daughter like said something really nice to him, and like he just got up and went and paid for their breakfast and left, and he was like, that was my last fucking $10, but I paid for them because I was like, fuck that, like they deserve it, you know what I mean? And he was like, that was sort of the kickstart to him, and then it was like the next week he got his like dream job start, and like it just started to roll on. But it was like he was really vulnerable to say like, yeah, I'm happy to give that away. It's really cool. Like
That's so powerful.
I think it's for that there. I look at that and I think right time, right reasons. Like I think for anyone listening who's like, oh,
yeah, on
I'm
your last
just gonna-
$10,
I'm going to go out and just, like,
yeah.
Buy that person a coffee.
yeah, just to try to get some good vibes. I don't think that's going
It's
to work.
not. It doesn't work
It's
like
not
that. You
the
don't do
same.
it for the
Yeah.
good vibes. You just got to do it.
Yeah.
It's
It's got to
gotta-
be organic, I suppose, right?
But yeah, it's really interesting.
They talk about it in the reason why I really gel with like Zen Buddhism and this sort of Japanese version, which really is Chinese because it was there for ages before. They talk about it. You sit when you're practicing meditation or sitting down. We just call it sitting because I don't really like the meditation word. It's all woo woo. You just sit. You pay attention to your breath. Simple, like nothing fancy.
So woo woo.
Yeah, I just like
What a descriptive word. So what it looked like? I was just
never-
woo woo.
you've heard woo woo before. You
Oh,
know, like,
yeah. No, I
I just
love
haven't
it.
heard in a while. It's brilliant.
I love it.
Yeah, like Mercury's in retrograde, and I'm going to blame that for all my problems. We always laugh about it at home. But anyway, yeah, you're sitting there, and because you gel body and mind, you unify it. And then you don't help someone because you think they need helping. You help them because it's an instinctual gut response.
Yeah.
Then compassion is just your nature. Your actions just, it's like, yeah, there's no second thought. And like that's like the highest ideal for me,
Yeah, it's awesome.
just to go, don't even think about it.
Yeah. Well, it's got to be. I think that's got to be a subconscious decision, doesn't it? Because then that's where I suppose your true colours kind of really come out,
Yep.
and that's what you want. Authenticity.
Bingo.
Be yourself.
Yep.
Well, fuck. Yeah.
Do you-
Wait. No.
You don't want to touch on the rest of it?
Well, not really. I feel like it's a whole another podcast.
It is a
now.
whole
I think.
podcast. Well, I mean, we know where you are, so we can get you back.
Yeah. I think.
Just down the road.
Yeah. Well, for context, I was gonna Ollie being a physio, we were gonna sort of take it and sort of talk a bit about some actual physio stuff as well, and tradies and pain and blokes and pain and that sort of stuff in general. But it might be another podcast.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Well, I want to know because, like I said before, you had a live yoga session. I must have been about 3 weeks ago now on the Sunday morning, and Lance and I got out there on the deck and had a go at it. And I remember there was like for anyone listening, like look up Ollie's Instagram. His old man calls him the rubber man. What does he call you?
I don't know. Pretzel is
That's it,
usually
the human
human
pretzel.
pretzel.
That's it, the human pretzel. And you were doing this move, and Lance Lance is doing it.
Please tell me she farted.
No. She goes, no, she didn't. And she goes, how are you going over there? I'm like, I'm doing it. And I'm like, I'm all like hunched over.
Contorted.
And she just lost it, started laughing. And I was like, you've stuffed up my rhythm now. Oh, it was hilarious.
That's where I wish the microphone was on.
But the people out there listening who, you know, are possibly in isolation now, that are thinking, gee, this sounds like it's pretty interesting. How can I get involved in some yoga or some mindfulness and some meditation? You know, how can people find you and check out what you're doing?
Well, at the moment, Instagram's probably the best move. So I'm in the process of filming a bunch of yoga classes and putting them on Vimeo, which is like YouTube, and then just to make yoga accessible, but that's just me. I'm one of thousands of people out there, and so for people, particularly blokes, wanting to get into meditation, I'd get them towards the Sam Harris app. He's a really good writer about all of this, comes across really calmly. And like my girlfriend's been using the app because, you know, she won't listen to me.
Ooh.
Beck,
that's fine.
Sounds like a fight on the cards.
No, that's okay.
Who put that fucking mug there?
so good.
Oh, every day. Oh man. But yeah, and then like I love helping people with this stuff. So like honestly, reach out, message me. Let me know if you have any particular questions about like any of this stuff or how it relates, particularly physio, pain and everything. But great places to start with yoga are, I teach Lighten Up Online. It's a studio up in Townsville, and I'll be putting up my own stuff. And then there's heaps of stuff. YouTube, glow.com, what's the other one? Aloe Moves. There's all these online subscription places. So whether you're in Longreach or New York and you've got a decent internet connection, thank you, NBN, hopefully. And you can stream and practice and do anything.
I'm at bloody New York. We need one here.
Yeah,
Decent internet connection.
Yeah, we can't even get a bloody Riverside Place.
Oh, you've said the address again.
Oh,
Step up
shit.
Brisbane.
We have to
Bloody
bleep
hell.
that out.
Can you cut that out, Ben?
Can you cut that out? No, I'm joking. Don't worry about that. Yeah, mate. I mean,
It's been awesome yarn. Yeah, we really got deep there, but it's, you know, blokes can talk about this shit, can't they?
but that's
Hey?
what we're here
should,
for,
we
because
should.
we're here to talk about the real shit.
Yes.
No
Yeah.
one's fucking doing what we're doing.
God.
It's no, it was really, I loved that. It was really good.
I think there is
for
a
having me on,
whole
guys.
nother podcast here about, about treating physical injuries, right? You know, because I think it's such a massive one for tradies.
Oh, mate. I
And
could
blokes
talk
in
for
general.
hours about that stuff.
Yeah.
But before we sort of finish, it's like
I already pressed stop recording.
oh damn.
No, I'm kidding.
No, the is the fact, you know, like we're trying to empower blokes to open up and talk and about
seek
mental,
help.
and seek help about mental
Yeah.
health, right?
Yep.
But some people won't even go see someone if they've got a sore back.
Yeah, they won't. Oh,
You know
trust
what I
me.
mean?
Yeah.
So it's like it's the vast things that people fucking just bury and just hold on to when it's
The
like
pain that people go through because they don't want to hear the answer.
Yeah.
They don't want to find out
like
why.
people like our old Star Trek driver at the old shed.
Yeah.
He was a heavy cigarette smoker. He was having a heap of chest pain, and I said, "Oh, like you'll have to go to the doctor." I fucking go to the doctor, mate. What the fucking go to the doctor for?
What do you mean?
I'm like,
I got my bloody
Hey,
dust
I'm having
mask
a-
right
yeah,
here.
man.
Mate, if I
I'm
had
like-
$1.
I'm just like, why? Yeah, I don't know. Whole other podcast. But for anyone out there that's going through any pain, reach out.
And if you're not
Yeah, let
going to
me
go
know.
to the doctor about it, then fucking don't whinge.
yeah,
Hey, we've got telehealth now. You can call in to your GP and or physio with private health rebates, by the way, and get some help. Like from the comfort of your own bed, you can sit there and call your GP and go, "Hey mate, I got a problem."
Yeah, right.
So just know that as Australia.
How
If you're
easy
at
is
home.
that? There's also apps out there as well
Oh,
that you can, you know.
there's heaps, so many good ones. We're really lucky.
Yeah, that was awesome, mate.
Thanks, guys.
Really
Such a good
appreciate
yarn,
your time
man.
and appreciate your vulnerability, mate. Just opening up, telling us your story is fucking
Yeah,
awesome.
that's massive.
It's
thanks,
it's
guys.
heavy, and we really appreciate.
Can't wait
it.
to hear what the big horse has got to say about this yarn.
We'll wait and see.
Yeah, we won't tell him. We'll just wait.
You
We'll just
reckon?
wait.
Just surprise.
Surprise him.
Hey Chuck.
Yeah, thanks again, mate.
Awesome,
And,
mate. Cheers,
yeah.
bro.